It's lights out and away we go.
Hello, and welcome back to Away We Go podcast, a Formula One podcast that goes beyond the track limits to talk about travel and lifestyle surrounding the sport. My name's Dianne Bortoleto, and today I'm in Margaret River, a little bit weary after watching the race. It's pretty late here, and I'm joined by the lovely Ciara Gillan in Berlin. Hello, Ciara, great to see you again.
Thanks, how are you? Good to see you too.
Yeah, good. So literally the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa has just finished, maybe not even an hour ago. So we're recording this late on Sunday night in UA time and daytime for you, just because of commitments and how life goes sometimes. You just got to squeeze the podcasting when you can. So the Belgian Grand Prix, yes, it was 44 laps. It's the longest race on the circuit at just over 7 kilometres, 19 turns. What can I say? It is a driver favourite. The drivers love this track. They love the layout. They love the elevation changes, which I think is about 150 metres from memory. And yeah, the race was, well, dry this year. We didn't see any rain, which is pretty unusual. A few sprinkles that were reported on the formation lap, but really a dry race. How would you describe it, Ciara, in just a few words?
How would I describe it? Unexpected, because I did not expect it to be as enjoyable as it was. Unsurprising, because our hero, our young boy Antonelli, won again, and maybe a little bit unfulfilling. But no, there's lots to talk about. There's a lot of positives, some controversial decisions in my opinion, and obviously a great win for Antonelli.
Yeah, definitely. He took pole position, and by the biggest margin that we've seen all season, which was only like 3 and a bit tenths. So again, we're talking minutiae, but it has been the biggest margin all season for pole position, and he was able to convert that to a race win. Fantastic. So I'll just quickly go through the top 10. So Kimi Antonelli, obviously, top step. Ferrari, Charles Leclerc finished in second. Max Verstappen finished in third with Red Bull, of course. Lewis Hamilton in fourth in Ferrari. Oscar Piastri in fifth. Isack Hadjar, Red Bull Racing in sixth. Lando Norris finished in seventh in McLaren. Gabriele Bortoleto finished in eighth, my cousin, with 1T, not 2, in the Audi. Arvid Lindblad, Racing Bulls, finished in ninth. And an Alpine, Franco Colapinto, snuck in the top 10 there quite late in the piece, but got in there and got the last points. So that's the top 10. Lots to talk about. Lap 1. It was a good lap 1.
Yeah, let's start there. That makes sense. Okay. Kimi had a good start, right? And then Max was on his backside, and then Max getting that lead. I was like so shocked. I kind of wasn't even focused there. I was, looking behind, and then suddenly Max was in the lead. That was impressive. Yeah. But the big thing about lap 1 was Russell and Hamilton, right? Russell's reaction time, his whole, the commentary saw a bit of it afterwards, and actually I caught his interview really quickly. And I had thought, oh, Russell isn't performing well, but it seems like there's a bigger question here. He's not having the performance of the car. There seems to be a bigger issue with the car, and he was heartbroken. I don't know if you got to see it, but yeah, very sad.
They cut to an interview with him during the race on Sky Sports. Only the audio, though. They kept the race playing, and they were saying that he was in tears, on the verge of tears. He was just so upset. So what happened was that Russell and Lewis Hamilton clipped, and it was just a racing incident, even though Lewis Hamilton ended up with a 5-second penalty as a result, which Sky Sports commentary team didn't really agree with. I didn't really agree with it.
I didn't agree with this. Yeah.
No. But as a result of that, Russell went off, and that ended his race on lap 1. In some respects, it bodes well for Kimi Antonelli's championship contention, but you never want to see a driver just go out kind of unfairly. And even Russell, during that interview where he was tearing up during the race, was saying it was a racing incident and he did not blame Hamilton at all. He was saying he shouldn't have been in that position in the first place because he ran out of battery or run out of power, and then was just in a position of being surrounded by too many cars, and that's what happened. So he's really annoyed with the car, with how the car is performing, how he's performing in the car. And I don't know what's going on at Mercedes, because Toto Wolff came out last race, right, at saying there's nothing wrong with the car. But after the race, they since found out that there is something wrong with George Russell's car. But there's nothing wrong with Kimi Antonelli's car. It's a bit like, I don't want to say McLaren last season because I don't want to talk about that again. It's a shame for George Russell, but it does bode well for Kimi Antonelli, who, yes, took pole position on his dad's birthday and then converted that to a win, like we said, and increased his lead in the Drivers' Championship.
Toto was interviewed afterwards, and he said that all the Mercedes engine cars had issues at the start. So they've obviously recognized that there's something going on. And I don't know why it is Russell's car and not Kimi's. It just seems really unfortunate. I'd like to think that's the extent of it. But obviously, when you've got a big championship on the line here, it just feels more than fortunate. It feels really just suspect and unfair. But I think it is just really, look, we'll see what happens, because they've now got a week till Budapest. They've got to figure out what's going on, and they've got to make sure that he's getting the fair shot at this, But yeah, it is sad to see. I think the incident with Hamilton, I do think it was a racing incident. I was really surprised they gave 5 seconds to it. I didn't think it was fair. Hamilton is a pretty honest guy in the sense, okay, not everybody would agree with that, but he came on immediately. He said, I was in a really awkward situation here. I couldn't do anything. You know what I mean? And it's not like he had room, like, oh yeah, he would have been pushed off the track. So it did feel more that George came in, Hamilton was ahead, George kind of came in on him, and they clipped. And it is an unfortunate thing. No one likes to see a car go out in the first lap. So yeah, that was lap one. One element of lap one.
I mean, lap one to me is the best lap of any Grand Prix, more so than the last lap, because that's when you get all the incidents and all the fights and all the cars are close together. But what else happened in lap one? Besides Max taking the lead, which again was pretty surprising. He did qualify on the front row next to Kimi Antonelli, and Lando Norris qualified in third, but of course had a 10-place grid penalty because he had a engine upgrade or new parts in his car, which put George up to third place qualifying. And then for Max to qualify in second, we should say that he did that because he got a tow from his teammate, Isack Hadjar, during qualifying. And Isack Hadjar towed him because Isack had a 30-place. How do you have a 30-place grid penalty when there's not cars on the grid? I really don't understand some of these FIA rules. So it didn't matter what Isack did during qualifying. He was always starting at the back. So why not give your teammate a tow and help him qualify higher up, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah. Max seemed to kind of have good moments and bad moments throughout the race. But the other thing that happened in the first lap, I think pretty much, was Charles. Charles, right? Didn't he have a moment where he kind of the Ferrari seemed to have an okay start. Then obviously Russell wasn't great, but didn't Charles take second at one point past, maybe that was because it's quite a long lap. It's quite a long lap, right?
Well, it's the longest of the season. So yes, it is.
Yeah.
A really long lap. No, I think you're right. Charles was in second at one point. And he was leading the race at one point as well, which was, it was wishful thinking. I was looking at it going, oh, it's really good to see Ferrari in the lead, but Kimi's right behind him and catching and in a better car. It was inevitable.
I think there was like only 2.5 seconds really between them at one point. And it was inevitable, right? The thing that happened was there was a tipping between Ocon and Behrman, and I think Sainz might have got a bit of the brunt of it as well. And so there was a couple of other little bits further down the line, but all the action, unfortunately, that we're more interested in was up at the top.
Yeah, that's right. Ocon went off, but he managed to get back on and complete the race and finish in 17th. The DNFs, besides George Russell, Sergio Perez in the Cadillac had suspension problems, so he retired on lap 13, and Lance Stroll, I think it was a gearbox issue with Lance Stroll, he retired on lap 25. So just 3 DNFs in the race. I think Fernando was probably hoping for a DNF so he could rush home and watch the World Cup since Spain's in the final with Argentina. Did you see Carlos Sainz and Franco Colapinto walking into the paddock wearing their team shirts, like their football shirts? Yeah. So Carlos obviously wearing the Spain national shirt and Franco wearing the Argentine.
Wow, that was enemies for the day.
For the next little while, probably.
there's loads of things that happen, but they're like not really straightforward. So I'm just gonna throw one thing in my head out. The team orders that sort of happened but didn't happen, but then there was quite dodgy messages between Piastri and Norris. So what was that about? Okay, so Piastri obviously, so Norris obviously qualified better than Piastri, but he had the penalty, so he started 13th. Piastri was up, did quite well at the start and got himself maybe fourth. At one point anyway, Norris is coming behind on his different strategy, hard tires. And the commentator was like, oh, okay, Piastri's going to have to move over because, they're on different strategies or whatever, okay? And so Norris gets ahead of them. And then they cut away to something else. And then next minute, we see in the thing that Piastri's back ahead of him. Or one Piastri. I love it. I don't know if there was team orders. I don't know what was said. But I love that he didn't do it, okay? Then later, did you hear the message? I don't want any of this back and forth yo-yoing, and I'll tell you my reasons later. Do you think you are? Hold me back, Dianne.
Was Norris's race engineer saying, no yo-yo with Piastri, and I'll explain later?
So at this point, okay, Lando was on older tires. Piastri had pitted to the hards, and Piastri was behind him, and Norris hadn't pitted yet. And I think Piastri was starting to gain on him, and I think that's where he was trying to lay down the law kind of thing, and he obviously didn't want to lose time to Piastri. Look, at the end of the day, I get that there's moments where you kind of have to play team orders, and you need to so there's been moments where you've seen Ferrari in previous races battle each other, and they've lost time, and so someone else is coming behind, and and their fight isn't with each other. It shouldn't be. You got to be smart about it. And even in this race, actually, there was a moment where Hamilton said, hey, I'm faster than Charles. He should really give me the place. And they didn't. I don't know what was said. I didn't hear it, but Charles didn't give it. And actually, Charles was good to stand his ground because really, if Lewis, you were faster than me, you should be able to take me. That's how I would think it is, And so in a way, I love that Piastri was like, okay, you're faster than me, but I'm also going to come back and,
That's great. And I love that spirit from Oscar as well of, if I'm faster, I'm taking the place. And rightly so. It's race 10 of the championship. We've got a lot of races ahead. Neither of them are fighting for a championship. Neither of them really are in contention for the title at this stage. So calm down,
Calm down. Yeah. Yeah. It was extremely entertaining for me.
But all in all, it was a pretty good, pretty clean race, besides Lewis Hamilton's 5-second penalty. Oh, and he nearly ran over his pit crew, right? He's going to be investigated for an unsafe release there because one of his pit guys kind of was leaning in as the green light went on for Lewis to go, and the guy hit the front tyre and was knocked to the ground, and it looked terrible. He wasn't seriously injured, thankfully, and it was really nice to hear Lewis on the radio straight away. Is he okay? Yeah, but it just goes to show how dangerous it is. Those guys and the pit crew, everything and everyone has to be 100% precise. You've got to be in position. The driver has to stop at the exact precise point, or it could just end in disaster. And we nearly saw that tonight or today. That's a blessing that everyone is okay after that. And we'll just have to wait and see what the FIA dishes out for Lewis.
But I also have an opinion on this. So, okay. So when it happened, I was like, oh my God, awful. Okay. And immediately ongoing, he was like, you could hear the anguish in his voice. He was like, it was green. I obviously wouldn't have gone if it wasn't green. And thank God the guy was okay. And then immediately you see Lewis is under investigation and for an unsafe release. And in my head, I'm like, okay, they can't give him a penalty in a race for something that wasn't his fault. So I was really relieved to see that they had their wits about them and they were like, okay, we'll investigate this after the race, okay? So then somebody was like, oh, they'll probably fine the team. And I'm like, well, so hang on a second. Who benefits from this then? Because the guy, if he'd been injured, he should get any kind of compensation. Why is the FIA getting, if they fine them, now they might just do a reprimand. But I don't know. I think I have such a kind of, cynical view on the FIA recently. And I'm just like, I understand giving out to a team to make sure they're not doing something unsafe, because you say it's a reminder about how much these guys are at risk. It's why they wear helmets, all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's like, the driver, it's their team that was injured. So it should be within the team and making sure this guy's okay and he gets any compensation, you know, for his. And also checking that it wasn't him who was at fault, because you said he was kind of leaning in. So did he lose concentration? Did he make a mistake? I don't know. I just kind of feels like another opportunity for the FIA to make a bit of money. And that's where my cynical mind goes.
Yeah. Not long after that, Lewis asked about his front wing and whether that had been adjusted for the tyre change, a different compound of tyre. And his race engineer said, no, there wasn't time for that. And Lewis was like, he was a bit grumpy. I think he said something like, man, you know what I wanted with this, or words to that effect, or and
So
so
they couldn't
maybe
turn left.
so maybe that guy was leaning in, and that's what the Sky Sports commentary team said, that maybe he was leaning in to make that wing adjustment, but the light had already changed. And I mean, a bit like, I don't know. Just unfortunate incident.
I think you're right. I think actually, yeah, there was there was possibly a miscommunication between the engineers at that. And you're right, maybe that's what happened. He was going in to adjust it, and then someone else thought, oh, we're just changing tires, we've got the penalty and we're just changing tires and that's it. And you're right, the communication. And so from that respect, I do understand why the FIA would then be kind of, you know, reprimanding Ferrari for, listen, you got to make sure your actions are safe and there's communication. And of course, I do feel like sometimes they just do things to make money. And I don't think I know any other sport where reprimands get so much financial, you know, like compensation or whatever, you know. But that's
And
just me.
speaking of pit stops, Lando had a really slow pit stop as well, didn't he? It was like 7 seconds or something, because they had issues with the back left tyre, getting that off when he came in for a pit, you know.
Yeah, no, but then that's a really good thing to talk about, because I can't remember exactly what position he was running at, but when he came out ahead of Bortoleto, or just behind Bortoleto, actually, that would have been much further down. So he wasn't necessarily looking at a podium, but he wasn't far off.
Yeah.
And then with that mistake on their end, knocked him massively back. He got 6 points in the end.
Yes, he did get 6 points in the end, and Oscar got 10. And it's just looking at the points. So we've got Kimi Antonelli at the top of the table with 204 points. Lewis Hamilton in second position with 159. Then just 5 points behind is George Russell on 154. Then Charles Leclerc on 126. Lando Norris is on 103. Oscar Piastri on 92. Max Verstappen on 91. That's the top 7. And then a bit of a drop, Isack Hadjar on 60. Pierre Gasly on 42. Liam Lawson in 10th place on 39. So that's, the driver standings. This was a good points haul for Kimi this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say a bit about Lewis, because actually I was thinking, like, I was like, oh, you know, Forza's actually not bad from what happened in Lewis's race. And, you know, he was having issues turning, as we mentioned. And, you know, and then he was, you know, at one point he thought he was faster, but then he couldn't take Charles and lots of back and forth for him. I was like, Forza's actually not bad. But then actually when I realized at the end of the race, he's actually now second, I was like, oh, actually really, I need to start thinking like the drivers do. Every single point counts, and actually being on that podium, being third, those 3 points of difference makes a difference, you know. It's exciting to see him back in second, but yeah, it's a hustle for him, right?
Speaking of Lewis, did you see his post on social media where he said something like, hold those you love close? And there were loads of photos of him and Kim Kardashian with Kim's kids by the looks of it, and some other kids. I don't know if they were all Kim's or Lewis's niece and nephew. I'm not sure. But I thought that was a really nice post. And he's obviously really happy with her to be posting that on his feed. So that's, anyway, just throw in that little tidbit of social commentary.
I think they're very cute. Can I just say, I think they're very cute. They posted a video of him. He posted a video of him on a ski board or something. I don't know. I'm terrible with water sports. And he's so impressive. The core strength on that man is unreal. And then she's on the boat with another friend and she's cheering him on. And it's like, I just think they're so sweet. I think they're so in love. I think they seem so happy. You know, I really have a lot of time for this couple. I'm like, I think he seems really happy. And you know, because he can be kind of a little bit grouchy. So it's nice to see him in love, you know. There was other really cute videos of them together.
So nice to see him being a little we haven't really seen much about his relationships in the past. And we haven't seen a lot of this relationship either on social media, but more than all of the others. And I agree, it's really nice to see him happy, and they both deserve happiness. Lovely. As far as qualifying goes, it was best qualifying for Arvid Lindblad in his Formula One career so far. So he qualified in 7th, and a great qualifying for Gabriele Bortoleto, who qualified in 8th as well. So I think that was his equal best for his Formula One career. There was another really good stat. Yeah.
I was just going to say about them both finishing in the points. I think Gabby is quietly making quietly making inroads. You know, he was, didn't Hulkenberg have an issue at the end of quali in Q2 yesterday, and then Gabby quietly gets into Q3. It's the Audi has reliability issues, and Gabby is not every race, but making his way. And then I think Lindblad is really interesting because him and Lawson were fighting a lot during that race. Colapinto at one point was overtaking, like Lindblad overtook Lawson, I think, and then Colapinto came in and it was like 3-1 and all this crazy stuff. And like, you don't get to see as much of it because they're not the big contenders, but they were pushing each other, to the max. And Lindblad won out. Lawson didn't even get in the points.
No.
In the battle against your teammate.
Yeah, Lawson finished 12th, and Pierre Gasly, Franco Colapinto's teammate, finished 11th. But I've got a fun stat here. This was posted on Autosport. They said, if you started driving in Formula One at 20 years old and made it to every Q3 available in 20 race seasons before you retire at 35, you would still be 50 short of Lewis Hamilton's record. How good is that?
Wait, so if you started racing at 20 years old and you got to every Q3 in all the races over a 15-year period, you'd still be 50 short of Lewis. Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's
crazy.
Impressive, right?
Yeah. The Max rumours are still flying around the paddock as well about him and McLaren. He got interviewed about that before the race. I think it was on Friday, where he just shut it down. He didn't accept, didn't deny, didn't say that there were talks, that there were not talks, that he'd be exercising his contractual right to leave Red Bull Racing or not. So he really just kept everybody, he just said, nothing to say, and really just no comment the whole time. So it's interesting because his manager, they've acknowledged that they met with Zach Brown and had a discussion, but it wasn't a negotiation about him going to McLaren, allegedly, apparently. So I think there's going to be a lot of rumours flying around this silly season.
I mean, they always say, right, rumors don't come out of nowhere, right? Where there's smoke, there's fire.
That's right. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Exactly.
Piastri's refusal to play the team game today is maybe a sign of that. Maybe Piastri's like, I'm leaving anyway. Why am I going to be your best friend here? What do I get out of this?
But Kimi Antonelli, our race winner, let's have a chat about him. So I thought he had a fantastic race. Like, he just was cool, calm, collected, not too many mistakes. Bono did come on the radio about 2/3 in saying no more track limits. Kimi's like, oh, how many have we got? And he's like, we've got 2, no more. And he brought it home.
Yeah, impressive. And even when the lead was taken away from him, he was calm. Didn't panic, didn't, wear down his tires. He just knew he had the pace to catch Leclerc, and he just did it, Yeah, he's really impressive. He really is, And not to be pitting him against George, it's kind of hard not to, because not to be pitting him against George, because I know that George has more technical issues than probably Kimi does. But it's hard not to pit him against him, because obviously they're teammates and they supposedly have the same car. But I just feel there is a calmness with Kimi. He's definitely pouring as he goes along. You could see, and we talked about it a couple of races ago, where he was very excited, and you're like, oh my God, Kimi, calm it, just give it a second. Don't, panic here, racing like a little bit of a wall thing. But he seems to have matured. Of course, every race is different. Maybe this will change again, but I do think that losing those races in between, so he got his 5 wins, and then not continuing that streak, I think it has brought a bit of a maturity to him that, maybe he didn't realize he needed. And, it was a good win today.
But I even think, like, even when he got pole position, you know, his message on the radio was like, yes, this is great. Like, he wasn't overly jubilant like he has been in the past. You know, I suppose if you've done it 6 times, the excitement becomes less and it's more of an expectation that you're going to take pole position, perhaps. You know, touted as a favourite in the best car and your car doesn't have issues. And he was really quick through all the free practices, obviously, all weekend. So it was looking really dominant too. Yeah.
I remember in 2023 when Max was getting pole and winning and all the stuff, and it was just so it was lovely jubbly. It was just like, oh God, you're not even appreciating this anymore. You're literally expecting this now every race weekend. And so you can get complacent. Obviously, he had reason to be, but it is nice to see Kimi that this could be an exception, like him winning every weekend. You never know what could have happened. As we said last week when I was like, oh, Charles was only going to win because of Kimi's DNF. And you rightly pointed out this is motorsports. When Charles took that lead and came out, I thought, oh, you know what? You never know here, right? Anything could have happened. So, yeah, nothing's guaranteed, you know, and you really got to fight for him. The Charles and Piastri incident didn't end up in a penalty, which I was surprised about. I actually thought Charles not deserved a penalty because I hate when anybody gets a penalty, but I was surprised that he didn't get one over Lewis getting one. I think it was more to do with the results in the sense of that's what they were saying as well. But they looked at it and said, well, who's still in the game? Russell's gone, ergo the incident was bigger. It was like that race last year where it was Piastri, I think he was on pole. Piastri, Leclerc, and somebody else in the middle. And Piastri came up on the inside. And because of that, they didn't see him. And so Leclerc ended up getting knocked off and ended up crashing out. Piastri got a 10-second penalty, even though it was not his fault. But he got this 10-second penalty because Leclerc's race was ruined. And Leclerc didn't even blame him. It's not his fault. So it's like...
well, it's the same as Russell and Lewis in this case. But also, they're looking at that Piastri-Leclerc incident. You know, Leclerc, it looked like he hadn't left as much room for Piastri as what Lewis had. Well, it was Russell on the outside. So it just didn't look like there was as much room there from Charles. So, yeah, the Sky Sports commentary team were like, I think he's going to be in trouble for this. I think he's going to end up with a bigger penalty than Lewis. But, yeah. And he didn't get a penalty. Great for Charles, but I suppose it just sort of puts the power in the FIA, which the inconsistencies with the rulings and, you know, when they look at what the outcome was as well, like, you know, Russell's race was ended, Oscar continued his race, but he had front damage to his car, which meant that, you know, he didn't have the full performance of his car. So maybe his result would have been different. We don't know. I don't like the inconsistencies in the rulings.
Yeah, and listen, I love both drivers, so I would hate for either driver to suffer, but I did feel, looking at it objectively, Leclerc did not leave space. Piastri was clearly by his side. Unfortunately, Piastri just didn't seem to have the pace to take him, but then it did look like Charles was cutting him off. And my limited understanding is it's not allowed.
Yeah. No, you're right.
But,
no, you're right.
Yeah, but it is true about the inconsistencies of penalties. I'm sure for fans watching the sport, it does make it more interesting because it's like football in a way. I can't stand football. I'll watch it. But I'm more of a rugby girl because I love the respect that they show to the refs, and there's a lot more kind of challenging kind of sports. But in football, I just find that it's very much based on the ref who's on on that day. You know what I mean? And it feels very subjective, and sometimes it feels the same in motorsports, even though they've got all these angles and they've got all this information. You know, it does kind of sometimes feel like
replays. Like both sports, football now and Formula One have got the benefit of going back through the replays. And like Sky Sports were saying that, you know, they've got at the FIA, they've got all the different angles, they've got all the data. They can see where the acceleration was, where the drivers braked, all of that information that the commentary team don't have us viewers, we don't have either. So they've got all the information there to be able to make a ruling on, say, Lewis Hamilton's penalty, for example. But in football, I feel like it's the same. They stop the game and they go to the virtual ref and watch it all. And
Sometimes, not all the time, though.
true. I think it was an unusually dry Spa race weekend, but nonetheless, a great result, a great podium, quite an entertaining race, and in a really beautiful part of the world. It's a race I would really like to attend. And fun fact, Nicole Piastri's favourite hotel in the world is just by the track.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's one that she loves to stay in. And she was there this weekend as well at Spa.
Nice.
Fabulous. Well, Ciara, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening. If you liked this episode, if you agreed or disagree with anything that we say, drop us a comment, and you can find us on all the social media platforms or on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Hello, if you're watching on YouTube, where you can find the full episodes as well, and audio episodes on all your podcast listening apps. Yeah, we've got Budapest next weekend, so that is going to be another exciting race. And then we've got the summer break. Yeah, so the last race for 4 weeks, but get ready for lots of rumours, because the silly season will really ramp up. And hopefully by next race, we'll have a decision on what's happening with the Middle East races later this season, given the war is still going on in that part of the world. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Until next week, and until lights out.
It's lights out and away we go.
Away We Go podcast is produced by Dianne Bortoleto.